Everyone, it's Kirei here for Arden Creative Studio, and in January it's all about focusing on a new year and a new hobby. It's such a perfect time to try something new and get creative while it's cold and we're sort of indoors more. Okay, so I'm using the fabulous Page Starters collection, and this is great if you are a new scrapbooker because the pattern paper pad that you can see here, it already has effectively the background laid out for you for where the photo sits. So I'm going to walk you through how I've created this layout, but there are going to be step-by-step instructions over on the blog, on the Arden Creative Studio blog, so you can find all the details there, particularly if you're a new scrapbooker and you're really wanting to figure out, how do I start? What do I need to get going? The visual guide here is obviously great, but I don't necessarily do everything in the right order because I sort of figure it out as I'm going. So definitely if you're a new scrapbooker, the instructions on the blog will be, are made in the most logical way. Okay, so I've got my pattern paper from the 6x8 paper pad. I've distressed the edges, torn a bit off the bottom, and now I'm just mounting my photos. So I've picked out two of the papers here. I've got the yellow and I've got the light green diagonal stripe. And these are from the two paper pads. So you've got the 6x8 in the solids and the 6x8 in the patterns. And I'm just layering up the two. I've distressed the edges as I go. And that's one thing I do quite a lot of. I really do distress the edges of my layers because I just sort of love the extra texture that it creates. It's not for everyone. Some people really like the sort of clean, crisp edges, and that's absolutely fine. If you prefer that, then definitely go for that. Okay, so I'm playing around here with just layering some paper strips behind my photo. I'm sort of creating almost a vertical design over on the right there with the three different pattern papers. I've got the really light green. It's very, very subtle, just with a pattern on it. And then I've got the two diagonal stripes in the dark green and the yellow, the ochre. And then I've just pulled out, I've sort of got this it's a journaling card with the frame, the dark green frame, and I've sort of tucked it in the top there because I figure that might work quite well tucked in as well. And now this is then how I effectively start with the layout. I pull out the ephemera, I play around with different bits and pieces, I just lay them on, thinking, just really looking to see how things are going to sit. They don't always end up exactly like I sort of get to, when I'm working with this, but it's a really good starting point for me. So what I usually do is I play around with all of the ephemera, take a photo when I'm happy, and then I've got that as my reference because obviously I need to take things off and get things stuck down. Okay, so we are back to the strips now. Now I've layered those background strips together and I've stuck them together, and you can see I have tucked in that journal card as well. I just cut it in half and tucked it in, and I went for that yellow. I think I had the green originally, but I've gone for the yellow in the end. My sort of main focus has been the greens, but I just like the yellow for that little bit of pop of contrast. So I'm just working out where my strips are going to go, and then I've decided to bring in a sort of a horizontal strips over on the left side there as well. So I'm just going to get those stuck together. But at the moment, I'm not sticking anything down, and that's sort of because I know I want to do some stamping and maybe some detail on the background. So I really just want to play around and make sure I'm quite happy with everything. And you can see I'm really, really sort of fiddling here, making sure I'm sort of comfortable with the positioning. But what I've done is I've used a pencil to just lightly draw a line around the edge of where all those papers are going to go, because that's going to help me be my guide essentially for when I'm adding my stamping detail. So I've pulled out the clear stamp set. It is the Maker series in wispy stems, and I'm using the smaller one of the stems, and I'm using Distress Oxides in Iced Spruce, which is the one here, and I also use Scattered Straw, but obviously you can use any inks you've got in your stash that coordinate with the papers. So I keep replacing in papers over the top just to make sure I'm happy with the placement of my stamping, because I can always add a little bit more if I need to. And then I decided I would go in with the yellow as well, just sort of layer a little bit over. So this is the scattered straw, and then I'm just adding it here. Now, to be fair, this bit actually gets quite hidden in the end. I could have gone back and added a little bit more, but I hadn't. But that's okay. I do actually end up adding a little bit of the yellow over on the right at the bottom, but that's not, I don't think I do that on camera. Okay, so I sort of feel like I'm happy with it. I'm going to layer everything down and make sure it looks okay. And I just add the stamping as a little bit of extra subtle detail to my background, particularly because I'm working with, oh no, here we go. There's the yellow that I'm adding over there. Because I'm on a white background, it almost creates another layer. And I'm all about layers, and, and so even though it's still flat, you've got the white cardstock, you've got the stamping, and then I've got my different pattern paper layers, which, as I said before, I really love that dimension that I get from all of that. Right, so now I'm obviously going back in now to stick these paper strips down, and I'm just sticking them all flat. But my edges are distressed, and I will sort of lift all the edges up. You can see that pattern paper mount for the photos is quite heavily distressed on the edges. I've torn in some little bits and curl that over. Yeah, but I will go round and I'll lift all the edges up of those strips. I mean, I hate to say it, I do it with my nails, which is probably not great. Anyway, I do. I've obviously distressed the edges first with the distressing tool, but I will go in and just lift them all up. Okay, so next photo. So I've mounted the photo on the two pattern papers in the light green and the yellow, and then I've added foam pads to the top edge of the photo only, and then it's stuck flat at the bottom. And the reason I do that is because often I'm tucking things in at the top and layering over on the bottom. I mean, for this one, I actually don't put anything in at the top, but I still, again, it gives me another layer, gives that dimension that I like. Okay, so I brought back the stamps, and I've just got a few of the words that I'm going to use, and I've got awesome and the best, and I'm just stamping those in the two colours again, and I stamp once and then I just stamp it off again, so you get that sort of honed effect. So you've got a darker and then a lighter. That makes sense. Okay, so it's just subtle, but just it just adds to that background. And then I'm bringing in some of the craft dies. So I've got the Best Day one here, which is from the Stacked Sentiment series. And then I've got the Tag Essentials 02. Now, the Best Day, I've cut that 3 times in the dark green. And I'm basically going to layer them up because I like I don't like anything really, really flat. I like that, to get the layers in, the dimension in. This is a bit of a trick which works really well with when you're using dies, is that if you just cut it multiple times and then stick them together, it gives you that effect, so you get that dimension. I mean, I went for 3. I probably could have gone with another 1 or 2, to be completely honest, but anyway, I sort of went for 3. So yeah, so I'm just sticking these together. And it's really easy, actually. I'm just adding some white glue to them, and then I'm happy with that. And then that's my title, Best Day. So my tags, I cut the tags out in a few different, I did all the shapes, but I don't use all of them in the end. I wasn't completely sure which ones I wanted to go with. So now I'm bringing back in the ephemera. So I've got the ephemera and also the fabulous laser cuts, and they are so beautiful. They're so detailed cuts on them, but it does mean they are you've got to be a bit careful with them, particularly when you're working with things like leaves and branches and that type of thing, because the stems are really fine. But I do love them because they have such great detail. So I'm just playing around here, just tucking things into my layer. I sort of had an idea of where things were going to go anyway, because I've already done that. But now that I've got things stuck down, I'll just keep building on that. But yeah, I'm focusing on using the leaves and the branches because my photo is obviously we're outdoors. And she's actually the daughter. That's the daughter of my best friend in Australia. And she was over for a holiday, and she came to stay with us for a week, which was lovely. So we went down to St Albans to have a look, because it's quite historical. Went down to the lake, had a wander around there. So yeah, it was a really lovely day. So I hadn't scrapped this photo, so it's been on my list to get done. So these colours actually work perfectly with it. So the greens and the yellow tones I thought really nice. And of course, so using the foliage and the butterflies work well because we're outside. So I'm just tucking things in. I've got this other word frame, the phrase piece here that says this is happy, and I'm just adding some foam pads to the back of that because I'll raise that up over that the little stamp that I've got there. It says lovely on it. I've already raised the stamp on foam pads, and actually I decided, so you can see, I'm taking the foam pad off, I'm going to stick it down, but I am just curving those edges, so I'm only adding glue. Generally, when I'm sticking things down that are flat, I only add glue to the center of them, and then that way I can still get the curve on the leaves, or whatever it is, again, to give me that lovely texture. So we're getting there. We're nearly to the end. Right, the tags. So I've decided to use the two little narrow tags, and I've got the fabulous rub-ons, and they've got lots of little tiny words here. So I'm going to rub on a few of the words onto the tags. So on the small one here, I've got this life. And then on the dark green one, I'm going to add two lots actually. I've got I think it is best ever and memories. And I'm just going to add those on there. And these rub-ons, I mean, if you're someone who hasn't used rub-ons since you're at school, and if you remember the old crikey Letraset rub-ons and things like that, these are way different. They're so easy to rub on. They honestly go on, very, very well. So you don't need to, there's not lots of rubbing or anything like that. Okay, so I've got those added, and I'm just tying the two tags together with some green embroidery thread and just tying with a bow at the top, and then I will get that stuck down just below my photo. So I love the little dies for things like this, just to add a different element of ephemera. There we go. That one's tucked on. Now, of course, I've used the greens and the yellows. There are other colours within the Page Starters collection in peaches and bluey tones. So obviously you could recreate this layout using the other colours. You could use a mix of all of them if you wanted, because they coordinate beautifully together anyway. But certainly I've sort of stuck with the greens and the yellows, but you absolutely could go down the road of just going with blues, or you could go with the peaches, or as I say, a mix of all of them. Okay, I always add journaling to a layout, and I just really want to make sure I've captured what it is that we're doing, where we are, what it's about, who I'm with, and also a date, because honestly, a date helps me when I finally get to putting my layouts in albums. Means I can keep them in date order. So yeah, okay, added those few little butterflies there. I'm still fiddling around with the ephemera. I always do this. Sometimes I'm thinking like, oh, maybe this needs to go on, maybe this. Okay, back to rub-ons. I've got a couple of the cute little yellow butterflies. I thought I'd add on as well, just at the top there and at the bottom. And then there is like a corner of a frame, a green frame, and I add that over there next to the title. With the best day, just and you'll see that in the close-ups. Okay, I think I'm almost done. Here we go. Here's the final layout. I've added my journaling. You can see that rub-on element over there on the left, and here are the close-up details. As I said, pop on over to the blog for all the step-by-step instructions, and I hope you've enjoyed the process video. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.